Good morning, everyone. Today is Wednesday, 10 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time, and that means that we're back with another episode of the Canadian Immigration Live Q&A. And it's all three of us together today. So Mark has returned back to office. Alicia and I have been here 2 weeks ago. I don't think we made a live Q&A last week. Um, I just didn't feel well, but it's all good again. I'm back and Mark is back and Alicia's back. So we're very happy to see everyone. While we're waiting for people to pile in, I would want to remind everyone to leave your comments, like this video, perhaps share it with your friends, subscribe to this YouTube channel if you have not done so yet. And while we're waiting for you and your wonderful comments and questions, let's have a little fireside chat. How are you doing, Alicia and Mark?
Well, doing pretty well, and yeah, would love to hear how Mark's doing. He's been away for a little bit.
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm just going to drop a little picture, Igor, if you want to try to share this critter here. Let's see if it works here. Maybe it's thinking. Yeah, I just dropped it in our little chat there if you want to share that picture. Yeah, so this is what I've been up to.
Okay, let's see.
It's a busy time for the Holthe household. Did you find it there, Igor?
Did you send it in
In
Teams?
Mhm.
Okay.
Oh, just wait. Nope. There we go. Now it should be coming through.
All right. Okay.
The suspense, right, everyone? The suspense. Yeah, there we go. So that's what we were doing. Round one. So that's my third oldest child, Connor, and his bride. So on Friday, August the 1st, we were down in Utah and they had their wedding down there. So that's number one. And then his older brother is getting married August the 30th up here, thank goodness. And so it's been a busy little stretch here, and August has only started. So yeah, and that's what's been keeping us busy. So Connor and Callie there.
Mm-hmm. And we also have some other exciting news, some update to how our firm will operate,
Yeah,
starting from yesterday, I think,
yeah,
or 2 days ago. So, Mark, maybe you can also share the news.
yeah. So we've as we grow and things get a little bit we get a few more moving parts. It sometimes becomes necessary to add some new members to the team. Um, Nicole, we've added Nicole to our mix, and she's going to be working directly with me to just help keep me a little bit more organized. And our model and how we work with our clients will remain unchanged, but she's just going to be there to help support and help with the communication with clients and make sure that we're providing the same good service, notwithstanding all the places that I'm being pulled these last few days. So, or I guess I should say the last month and into the future. But over the last, I guess it's been 5 years now that we've kind of revived and have the firm as it is right now. It's been quite a wonderful journey, and we've continued to produce content. We've continued to try to help and give information that can educate people to making good decisions. And that content that we've generated, the YouTube channel that we have here that hosts our live streams, the podcast, and all of the content that we do in our blogs and everything, we've tried to just be a source of information and help to people. And I think now we're at a stage where the message is getting out, and our Google reviews are quite positive. People enjoy the opportunity to work with us and have had positive experiences. And then they tell their friends, and they tell their friends, and so the firm is growing, and it's good. At the same time, a lot of the growth that we're experiencing is sad, because it's a lot of people who are running out of options. And I think the government, when they made the comments that they wanted to see 1 million people leave the country, I think they didn't count on the tenacity of us immigration lawyers and our clients' willingness to make changes and sacrifice and adjust and learn things like French in order to stay. So it's going to be very interesting how this push-pull dynamic is going to play out, because we're here to help and do everything that we can to help people exhaust all of the avenues that are legitimately available for them to not lose their hope of staying in Canada. So that
Yeah.
message from our standpoint is getting out there, and it's creating more work for us. And yeah, and so it's been a long time since I've had an assistant, and um, so Nicole's going to be a kind of a legal assistant. She's just kind of cutting her teeth in the industry. So eventually she'll probably grow into kind of a paralegal role for us. But it's a new phase, a new stage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's actually interesting. You've mentioned that a lot of our growth is caused by the number of people that the government is trying to get out of Canada. And I remember even 5 months ago, immigration was right there. Like everyone was talking about immigration and the numbers and everything. But after elections, it's suddenly like it's not a prime topic anymore. So how do you attribute this to what's happening? And do you think that perhaps the government has reverted on their plans to get rid of people, or they just doing it quietly?
Yeah. Alicia, I'll let you offer your thoughts, and then I'll share mine on that.
Yeah, I think they're just being a little bit quiet for now. I think they're letting things lie low. We have, of course, a new immigration minister. It's the summer. There's a lot of economic priorities right now going on with the US and trade and negotiations. There's, of course, all sorts of things happening with wildfires across Canada right now and emergencies, state of emergencies. So I think that now that they've really tightened up the ship in terms of closing many of the avenues for most people, unless you're really tenacious, just like Mark said, I think they're just kind of letting things ride for a while, and they'll just see how things play out.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I do know, and at least from my experience, is that they've taken a far greater interest in refusing applications than they did before. And at least from the clients that I speak to, the requests that are coming back for people, really solid applications that are, that are being bounced. And I just had a conversation just yesterday morning with a very qualified study permit applicant, and he's looking to study AI at Queen's University. And yeah, I had to explain to him that, that and he's coming from India. And I said, you have to appreciate that even though everything that you put in there may be, well, traditionally, even 2-3 years ago, just fine, and it would have been more of a slam dunk application, that's not the case anymore. And so what we do is prepare the applications the best that we can, but at the same time, kind of, preparing them for court if we need to file a leave application. And sometimes we're seeing decisions that are much more strict, even harsh at times, than we normally would have anticipated. And the avenues to seek remedy are also being closed, and they're more difficult and more challenging. So, but there have been some positives, and I saw one comment. One positive is a slight change to, and I think it's the visitor applications right now. I can't remember, but providing the GCMS notes, essentially the file notes with the actual refusal. And I remember now it doesn't really matter, but it must have been 4 years ago, maybe just after I dropped off the national executive. I had a meeting with IRCC to review their intention at that stage to include those. And I looked at kind of the templates that they were looking at creating, and they asked for, my thoughts on, and it was just a couple of the officers and myself. And it was kind of it was embargoed, so I couldn't really talk about it, but it was pretty much what we see now. And I was always really surprised that it took them so long to finally do it, because it's a simple thing to just include the full notes. But now I think with the way they've tightened things down with Chinook, they might provide the notes, but there's not a lot of substance to the notes now like there used to be. So
Mhm.
those are some changes, I guess, one positive, and we'll definitely talk about that a little bit more. Mhm.
Yeah. And for those who wonder, what we're talking about is the new decision from the government where they will actually share the notes. Let me see, I probably will be able to find um, the actual announcement, which was released on the 29th of July, and we also have a video on this exact topic. So the new refusal notes will come with temporary resident visas, visitor records, study permits, and work permits, and so they will add more application types over time.
Right.
And here's the funny part, Mark and Alicia. Oh,
Mhm.
sorry, I haven't added Alicia to this screen. Sorry, Alicia. Okay, now we're all back.
Yeah. Now she's
Uh,
with us.
Here they say clients who apply using the IRCC portal new version will not receive officer decisions notes at this time, which is, to me,
Uh,
it's kind of funny. It's like
there is no reason to use that thing anymore. Never was, as far as I'm concerned. But
yeah, but like you try to lure more people to using the new portals because for some reason this portals, like either they make their lives of the officer easier a little bit, or they're just a little bit user friendly. But then I don't see any explanation why the notes would not be available to the users of the new portal. So it's a little bit interesting, to say the least. All right. I propose that we move on to the actual questions.
yes.
So we'll give a couple of shout outs to Sarpreet, good old days back, and I think that was the first comment referring to Mark returning back to the live Q&A. We have a message from Kram, who's watching from Athabasca, Vinette, who's watching from Jamaica, and a whole bunch of other people watching from all other parts of the world. For example, Daniel's watching from Ethiopia.
Addis, yeah, Addis
Uh,
Ababa.
yeah, we have Joe, who's studying French, the big three.
Yeah,
Awesome. Tulipa says blessing always on all of you. Thank you so much.
thanks,
And
Talipa.
then we have many, many other people tuning in from other parts of the world. And while we're waiting for them to leave their comments and questions, I'll pull up the first question that we've received in this live Q&A, and this one is from Teffy. I only included jobs I'm claiming points for in my Express Entry profile. Is that okay?
Yeah, and this is one we get all the time. It's one that's covered in our course, so that's one that is very, very frequent, and people are often confused. And the one thing that we have noticed is that, you know, when you're applying for your PR application these days, most people have already submitted a study permit application. They've already maybe done an extension on their study permit. They've done a PGWP, maybe they've done a co-op work permit, and now they're looking at doing their PR application, and usually under express entry. So we really, really recommend that if you can't afford to book a consult and reach out and hire us, we do have a course. And you guys have put tons and tons and tons of hours and so much on the ground experience and knowledge into this course. And the reason that we have it is for people who can't afford legal representation. So at least it gives you a good background and you have a ton of resources available to you. But in general, when you're looking at your express entry work history, you're going to be putting in what you want to claim points for. Now, you do have to be super careful because I see some other comments from you, Teffy, about whether or not you've listed things in previous applications. And this is where you might need to really do a good job on explaining things in your letter of explanation, because if you had previous work history, especially if you have previous work history that you didn't put in your previous study permit or your PGWP, and now you're trying to claim points for it, immigration's going to be worried about misrep for sure. If it's the other way around and you just forgot to put it in some of your previous history, you're not claiming points for it, it's not really material, it's 3 months, it was some unrelated kind of lower skilled job, it's probably unlikely to be an issue, but you always want to correct your record and make sure that everything is comprehensively there, because sometimes it does matter. Sometimes immigration can say, hey, if we knew that you were working as, I don't know, a cybersecurity expert and you already had all this knowledge and you're applying for your degree in AI, we might not have given you that study permit because we might have thought that you already had that expertise and it didn't make sense with your study permit plan. So they can always look at any application and go back and make an allegation of misrepresentation. So that's where we want people to be super careful. But of course, your obligation is always to be truthful and make sure that you have an explanation and you provide that evidence up front instead of just trying to hide it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I'll add to that is like with the course, in addition to the, well, whatever, over 70 lessons, individual videos that we have our masterclass, and you can see there it says 13 days. The next masterclass is in 13 days, 5 hours. That's because we had one last night. And I had, in particular, there were 2 immigration consultants that joined me. And one of the questions that one brought up is one that maybe many of you would face as well, which is, well, in my profile, I put all this work history in there, and now I've got my invitation to apply. And, there's a couple different things that happen. Sometimes you can't get a reference letter from one of those employers. But what if you don't really need that work history, or you've included work history that is for low skill work, a tier 4 or tier 5 work, which you're not getting points for, or maybe you've listed a whole bunch of foreign work experience for your spouse in your profile. And now it's asking you to provide reference letters for all of that in the EAPR portion. So that was a question that one of the consultants brought up, and they said, well, what should I do? Is it okay to remove work history that's in my profile or my client's profile and just simplify it in the EAPR with just the stuff that's getting points or that's going to the minimum entry criteria for one of the programs? And, and this is an interesting question, Alicia and Igor, because like I said, we're seeing more errors or just decisions that are, it's arguable whether they're supported in law, whether the decision is a reasonable interpretation. And we're seeing more of that now. And it's almost like there is pressure from the government to not be as facilitative. And I don't know, it's more just anecdotal, and I don't want to try to hold something out that isn't true, but it sure feels like there's less love and kindness coming from immigration than there was in the past. We'll leave it at that. And so when you have individuals that are making changes to their portal, any change you make, you definitely want to have a letter of explanation to explain what the heck you're doing. But in the case of removing things from profiles, unless it's truly a low skill where there's no points, sometimes, Alicia and Igor, I'm starting to second guess whether I want to pull stuff off. So for example, if I have the client says, well, I already have that reference letter, well, then maybe I don't worry about it and I just include it. If it's really hard to get something and they truly don't need it, or they just can't get it, then yes, I will pull it out and I will provide a very good explanation why, the A11.2 that is being met. But, when I was talking with a consultant, I think all of us representatives are very uncertain, and we don't want to make a change that somehow will cause an officer to exercise their discretion in the wrong way and then have a refusal. Now, those refusals are 100% challengeable. Like, you can go in, but it's just the avenues. And Igor, you can talk a little bit about the leave process now, but it's more difficult than it ever has been. They're far less likely to consent and send things back now. They really push you. If you're going to challenge, well, we're going to make you go as far as you can, and the costs and everything, we're going to make it as difficult as possible for you to question what we're doing, because there's a lot of us, a lot of firms out there that are filing a lot of leave applications. So it's just a different shift in mindset that I've started to start, just to look at more critically, even in 2025, since the new year. I probably will still, be fairly liberal in removing things if they're not necessary. But oh my goodness, you guys, you have to make sure your letters of explanation are done properly. And in the course, we have a lesson that's dedicated exclusively to that. And we kind of use 2 different letters of explanation. One is focused on the information that you're including in your application. Things like if you need to describe something or explain something about your address history or your travel history, for instance, or maybe something about some family members or something. And then we have another letter of explanation that we include with particular documents. So we have one special one for our records of employment that we encourage all of our clients and anyone who take the courses to to do it in the way that we kind of present it. And so we hope that through taking those extra steps that maybe will make the officer's job just a little bit easier, and they'll just approve, but it's a lot more in certain times for sure.
Yeah, and I also wanted to add to what just Mark said, that it doesn't always mean that you make a mistake when your application is refused. Sometimes officers make mistakes. And what we see, unfortunately, especially recently, that, for example, you submit a study permit application and it's a very strong study permit application. You explain everything, and there's not a chance in the world that a reasonable person would find that you come to Canada to overstay your study permit, and you really want to come and study, and you explain that this education is absolutely necessary, and you provide all documents, and then the officer just refuses your application after running it through Chinook and barely looking at your documents and explanations. And then when this application is refused, guess whose problem it is? It's your problem, because you will be missing your intake in school, and the officer does not care. And Mark and Alicia, just a little update, we will have, and for everyone else, we will have a very special guest joining us next week, unless something changes. And
Awesome.
we'll have a little more in detail discussion about the refusals and how the officer's mistakes may make your life a lot more complicated. And that's why, like, we're saying that if you can control something, if you can explain something, better do it. Better use this opportunity to make the life of the officer as easy as possible. Even if the officer ultimately decides to refuse your application, you can challenge this in court. Yes, it will be painful. Yes, you will waste your time and money. But ultimately, what are the options? You don't explain anything, you get a reasonable refusal, and then you're left with nothing. Or you explain everything, you get an unreasonable refusal and a bonus chance to challenge it in the future. So we'll have a little more discussion about it next week. So for everyone who's interested in this topic of refusals, please make sure you join us next Wednesday. On this note, I would want to pull up this this comment, and we're going to break the order a little bit because this one is special. The Cold Coke says, I got my permanent residence approved today. Congratulations. Congratulations. Okay. The question is, my visitor...
Best Coke. That's the best Coke, a cold Coke.
Yeah.
As long as it's a soft drink. As long as it's a soft drink.
So this person says, my visitor record application, I understand, and my bridging open work permit applications are still in process. Can I withdraw them? What is the process to withdraw? And so my first reaction is, the Cold Coke, you were absolutely right to submit an application as long as you needed to maintain your status. So that's very good that you did it. And then, yes, absolutely, you can withdraw the applications. And Mark and Alicia, while you're answering this question, I will be pulling up the webpage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's always like it's worthwhile to do that. Maybe you can get some of your money back. Often, if it's too far down the road, they won't refund. But but sometimes, and it's not like money is precious these days. But at the same time, you need to make sure when you say your PR is approved today, that that's your confirmation of permanent residence, and you are in fact a permanent resident. Because the last thing in the world you want is to withdraw it, and then there's some other little glitch that comes up after, and then you don't end up getting your permanent residence, and then you're out of status. So that is only in the world where you are 100% certain your permanent resident status has been confirmed.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good point, because when they say, okay, now here's the email with a link to register for the PR portal, that's not the end of the road for you. Like, you're not permanent resident until you get the e-Cooper that you actually print and sign. So only then you are a permanent resident, and until then you have to maintain your status. Okay, wonderful. So let's go back to the questions in the order in which they were received. So this one is from Mayan, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name, Omer, okay. IRCC has started giving out officer decision notes, and now does one need to wait for Rule 9 notes before filing application record in judicial review? Yes, you do. Nothing changes the court process for you. You still need to file um, the leave application, ALJR we call it, and then it initiates this Rule 9 request process, unless in the actual leave application you indicated that you have received the written um, notes from the officer. And then you can essentially skip the stage and kickstart the 75 days deadline to file an application record. But I would still wait to get the Rule 9 reasons, because essentially you may get something else there. We're yet to see how detailed the actual refusal notes are with the refusal letters. And there are some concerns among practitioners saying that the notes you will receive in the refusal letters will not be complete, will not be
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you absolutely want to wait for Rule 9 notes. Okay, this one, Mumi is asking, can we expect continuous CEC draws based on their 2025 targets? We're still very far from those numbers.
Yeah. I had this discussion as well last night in the masterclass. Someone said, what do you think they're going to do? And one thing we are pretty certain about, that there are not going to be too many FSW draws. So for people outside of the country, we know the levels plans have highlighted 2 areas of focus. Those in Canada, which are essentially your CECs, and then the targeted draws. And so we have PNPs incorporated within that, which are in Canada often. But generally speaking, the CECs, they said, are they going to stop? Is it just going to be targeted? And no, I don't think so. I think through the balance of the year, we're going to continue to see CEC draws and the targeted draws, the category based.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Next question would be from Laura. I have 2 years of work experience from a job that is not related to my degree, and 1 year of work experience from a job that is related to my degree. Can I claim points for work experience only with the job related to my degree? Wonderful question. I remember when I was just starting looking into Canada, I had the same question, and very good beginner-friendly question.
Yeah, and Laura, it really depends on what application category you're looking at. So under Express Entry, and I'm assuming that you're talking about Express Entry here, because there are very specific programs that have very particular employment and work history requirements. Like, for example, I was talking to somebody yesterday who had filed under Agri-Foods. And under Agri-Foods, you have to have had work experience under a closed work permit in a particular industry related to agriculture and a particular knock as well. But for Express Entry, the rules are different. And this is also something we cover in the course, but you can also go to IRCC's page and you can take a look. So this all also depends on whether you're inside Canada and you have inside Canada work experience, or whether you are outside Canada and you're just creating a profile that might be eligible under FSW or a targeted category. So remember, if you happen to have healthcare, if you've got one of the knock experience categories on the healthcare targeted occupations, plus you meet minimum eligibility, you might have a shot as somebody who does not have Canadian experience. You might have a shot at a healthcare draw. Same thing for French. If you're Francophone and you're hitting that NCLC level 7, you might definitely have a chance at becoming a PR with your foreign work experience. So take a look at your foreign work experience. Take a look at IRCC's page on what the minimum eligibility is for work experience if you're under FSW or if you're under CEC. But generally, as long as it is a high tier knock. So you're going to look at that 5-digit knock. So keep in mind that the knock is now updated. It's no longer 4 digits, it's 5. And take a look at the second digit on your 5-digit knock code. If it starts with a 4 or 5, like if you've done the analysis and you say, oh, it starts with a 4 or 5, that is not high skilled work. It's not going to count for anything in Express Entry. So just keep that in mind. But otherwise, if it is the second digit is a 0, a 1, 2, or a 3, then you're looking at a high skilled knock, and it ought to count as long as it was paid work. And if you're in Canada, you can't have been a student at the time that you accumulated that work.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. The next question is a super chat from Sandeep. I have a 4-year bachelor degree assessed through WES, and then a 2-year postgraduate diploma in Canada. For express entry, highest education, should I choose bachelor or 2 or more degree where one is 3+ years?
So maybe, Igor, you can pull up the
That's
education chart. So basically, SENDIP, everything depends on your WES if you're looking at foreign education. So if it's a 4-year degree, and hopefully what you mean by that question is that WES has said it's equivalent to a 4-year Canadian bachelor's, then you would be looking at what is your 2-year postgrad diploma in Canada, and what level is it at? I'm assuming it's not a master's because you just said 2-year postgrad diploma. So not a master's level, but then as long as you meet the eligibility criteria for having a 4-year foreign degree, plus you've actually completed a program in Canada, then you hopefully ought to be claiming those points for 2 or more degrees where one is 3 or more plus.
Yeah. And remember, when you're completing your profile, you're not actually choosing that. So it's making that designation internally. You're just entering in your education. So you're entering in your 4-year bachelor's, and WES indicates it's a Canadian equivalent bachelor's, and then your Canadian 2 or more degrees. Well, when you enter that in and indicate your DLI and those things, then it will automatically count it as 2 or more degrees. And like Alicia said, the only time it would be more is if one of those was a master's level program.
Yeah, and I would direct you to this page. Sorry, it took me a little bit longer to find it,
Yeah.
where you can actually see how many points you will get, and take a look at this table as well.
Mm-hmm. The one thing that I have noticed where people don't get their education points properly is they get confused when the system is asking them, did you go to a public institution? And then there's like a big long blurb about public institutions or privately funded colleges in certain scenarios. And people are like, I don't know, no. And then they don't get their education points. So take a look, make sure it was a DLI, make sure that it was publicly funded. You do have problems if it was a private college in some scenarios, so be careful about that.
Yeah. And another thing that we teach in the course that I cover, that comes up a lot when people can't figure out, why am I not getting my Canadian education points? And they don't realize that there's a question about, was your program of study at least 50% or more, I think it was, English as a second language? And people read it and they think, oh, well, yeah, it was an English program because it was delivered in English. So yes, it was. And then what happens, because you've answered that way, it treats it as if it was an English as, a second language or additional language, as my daughter now tells me in school. They refer it to as EAD because people often have more than 2 languages they speak. But yeah, that's the one thing you got to watch for if you're not getting points.
Mm-hmm. Mark, Alicia, I'll have to step aside for a couple of minutes. I've sent you the list of questions in the chat in Teams, and perhaps you can answer some of those, and I'll be back in a couple of minutes.
Sure. All right. Okay. Well, we won't pull them up. We'll just talk. So you guys listen. I'll read the question, and then we'll have Alicia answer all of them. I'm just joking. Okay. Here we go. So the first question that we're in this post-Igor era is from Nash. And Nash says, how likely is it that someone might have their PR application refused after they've already reached the virtual landing stage, after they've received the first portal email, that is? So Alicia, have you ever had a situation where someone's received their portal confirmation, they've already started, they just don't have their e-COPR, sent back yet? They're in that limbo period right now. So have you ever had a situation where something has come up and the PR has crumbled or fallen apart?
Once I saw it. It wasn't my case. Somebody booked a consult after the fact, but it was a very unique scenario, and it had to do with family members, and it had to do with who was the principal applicant and parents and kids and who landed first. And it was a very complex scenario, and it was a resettled refugee case. So it was very particular. It was totally out of the ordinary. And because in that case, the child had tried to land before the parent, IRCC tried to claw back the landing and basically said, no, you know what, we're going to take this away because it wasn't done with the anchor relative. The principal applicant on the resettled refugee had to go first, and it was a big fight. Anyway, so that's the only case, Nash, where I've seen something go haywire at the very last stages. But in general, as long as there's no misrep, right? As long as there isn't something where there's criminality or there's inadmissibility or there's misrepresentation, I think it would be highly unusual.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a situation where something has come up that affects your admissibility, the background security screening, because generally speaking, unless someone sends in the old world leash of poison pens and says, oh, what Nash submitted in that reference letter, that was completely fake. The company doesn't exist. It's fraud. And I just want you to know so you don't land Nash. I'm making this up, Nash. I know you're totally fine. But something like that that can affect things all the way up until you officially become a permanent resident. And in some cases of outright fraud, they can unravel as well. But yeah, we only got through Nash's comment here, Igor.
Okay.
But yeah, so at the end of the day, it's going to be a rare situation, but still got to be careful.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So as I'm back, we will be pulling the next question from Malik. Malik's asking, any prediction for the lowest CEC draw? I'm standing at 512 with a non-accompanying spouse. Thanks in advance.
All right, let's pull it up, Igor. Let's take a look. Let's see what the history of CEC draws has been more recently. So we know that it's been a couple weeks since we've had a draw. We're kind of overdue. We know probably this week we'd like to see, more than likely there's going to be a P&P draw again, but we did have a CEC relatively recently.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I had several people reach out and ask, like, I've heard that this week we will have a French draw. And I'm like, where did you hear this information from? Like, how do you know? Like, not even RCC officers probably, they don't even know. So it's actually interesting. We didn't have a French draw since March. Maybe they were watching our live Q&As and
and they were massive, so they were big, right? And then we had our really large healthcare draw, and you can look at the score, guys. Like this, like you think healthcare, it's probably not going to be super high, but that is not the case. To still have it at 475, I think is what it was, right around there, with such a large draw of over 4,000 invitations. I was quite surprised at how high the human capital is. So, but if you look at CEC and we go back to that, Igor, and we look historically, how long has it been since we've gone under 500? We have to go all the way back to September. Is it of when was it?
2000.
Only all the way back to September of 2021. Wow. And so then let's see. And this is just CEC. Yeah, exactly. So the scores they've been really, really high. So,
and it was in the time of COVID when they were only focusing on Canada people.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So the score of 512, when was the last time we had that? Well, July 8th, there was a fairly large one that was 518. So if they were to do another one, let's say that's about 3,000 or 4,000, would it be enough to push it down below 512? I personally don't think so yet, but let's go back and take a look at what the pool looked like immediately before the last draw, Igor. So if we look at the distribution, one that I've asked them repeatedly, every comment, every chance I can, there's nothing served by breaking down the 400 to 500 at this stage, or the 450 to 500. When Express Entry was first launched, they didn't have that range. They only had 400 to 450 that were broken down by 10 increments, 10 unit increments. But it would be really good if they could have the breakdown of 501 to 550, because that is where the majority of these 20,000+ people are. And it's really quite exceptional that there are that many people. And I think the scores generally with CEC, the reason they're not going to take big drops is because what are people doing right now? Like, what are you counseling all of your clients?
They study French. and their points
French,
skyrocket to
French.
570.
Yeah. Yeah. So French. And so if everybody is studying French, well, it's going to have a number of effects. One, as we're going to have, just like the government, hopes and wants, far more bilingual people all across the country that speak English and French. So that is absolutely going to be an impact. Now, the extent to which people can retain their French after they get the scores when they're in a predominantly English-speaking province, that's something else to be said. But it is a mandate, and it's something that the government is really encouraging. Like even the small little town of Cardston, where our church's temple is, where my son's getting married August the 30th. Every time I go there to attend the temple, there's a big billboard sign there that says, register for the Francophone school. And so the federal government has put a lot of resources into the expansion of French across the country. And even within our local immigration partnership that I'm a part of down here in Lethbridge, in our employment working group meeting that's coming up next week, I think it is, number one on the agenda is what can employers do to help their workers stay in Lethbridge, Alberta? Study French. So we're trying to get the representatives from the French organization here in Lethbridge to come and just talk about some of the programs and the offerings that they have, because all of the English programs have been, they've had all their funding pulled. And it's not just Lethbridge Polytechnic here. I've spoken with colleagues and friends all across the country. And many of the colleges that had really wonderful English language programs, all the funding has been cut and they no longer have them. Whether that's here, whether that's, other colleges across Alberta and even across the country. But so French is the massive push of our Liberal government. And so it's important that people recognize that. And so the scores are not going to come down super fast, as people work to increase French.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I wanted to pull up one comment. Let's see.
Which is a good point. I think I'm going to start accessing more French language services and training. I'd like to learn French too.
Mm-hmm. Maybe Alicia will be your first teacher.
Yeah.
Alicia, I remember we connected for consult, and Alicia had the whole consult in French. So.
Mm-hmm. Very cool.
It's not pretty. My vocabulary is shot. My conjugation is terrible, but I can understand what you're saying, and I can respond in French. I did French immersion when I was growing up. My kids are in French immersion. I really value French, and I try to keep it up. I do my Duolingo, but yeah, you got to use it. It's hard when you're not in a French environment.
Yeah. Back in 2019, when we were waiting for our results on Express Entry with my wife, we went to Koodo French language classes in New York City, and I could order coffee and croissant in French, and I could even have some very basic conversation in French, and I loved it. But I'll tell you, it's a difficult language for sure, especially like when you try to understand what they're saying. Like you can read, you can write, it's okay, but like listening is so hard because like everything is sort of like one long never-ending word, and trying to pronounce it as well is pretty complicated, but then reading and writing is more or less okay.
Yeah, I think that's exactly people's experience when you're learning a new language. That was how it was for me when I was learning Portuguese in Portugal. It was at the beginning, I could not tell where one word, word ended and another began. And then slowly over time, your comprehension starts to get better. And you look back a year and a half and you're thinking, wow, I can actually have communication with all these people and understand everything they're saying, and I can speak the language, and it's quite fun. So that's another one of the fears. You spend a whole bunch of time learning French, and then my Portuguese, I'm going to lose my Portuguese, but it's all good. Yeah.
This question is from Isabella. It's again a little bit out of the order. Considering subscribing to the masterclass, congratulations! That's a good idea. That is a good idea. How long will the subscription be valid for? So, Mark, here's your time to
great question. I love talking about this. This is my favorite part of the whole course. So the course is a lifetime subscription. So the people that registered for my very first course in, I think it must have been 2015, the latter part of 2015, when Express Entry was first launched, they still have the ability to access every new edition of the course. So how long, Isabella? Life. And then after that, and that goes for the immigration consultants as well, right? And then the question becomes, okay, well, what about the master classes? And so a few years back, I think it was actually 2021, we made the decision to open up the master classes also for life. So individuals who subscribe now, unless something happens in the future, we decide to go a different direction. But as it stands right now, you can come back to as many master classes as you want to. And I have consultants that come back every master class with sometimes the questions are about express entry. Often, you guys, they're about every other area of the immigration law, but that's okay. You know, and so, yeah, it's, as far as I'm concerned, there's no greater value out there for assistance, because not only do you have just a great little course that just will truly help you to avoid some of the, you know, the most common mistakes and problems that we see people make, but if you have something that's just unique to you, or you're just not quite sure, it doesn't fit to your unique circumstances, you can come into that class. And it's different than this, like our YouTube and our live streaming. It's more like a webinar kind of format, more like almost like a Zoom call, where people, you can come on, you can turn your camera on, we just talk, or you can post comments. And yeah, I love that course. It's kind of been the flagship of the Canadian Immigration Institute for years and years. And it's just so wonderful, just, you know, helping people. And for people that attend it, it's so good because you get to listen to the questions that other people ask, and then everybody learns. So good.
Maybe while we're on this too, Igor, if I can, we might jump to Emily P's question, because she was just asking about how much it costs to retain us. And just to clarify, if you do retain us, then you actually also get access to the course. So you get access to the course, you get us, you retain us, and it depends on what kind of application you're looking at. But if you're looking at an express entry application, which I think you are because you're talking about an ITA, then what we normally do, or what I normally do anyways, is break it into half. So if you just want help with a profile, we'll break our fees into half. And then if you get ITA, then you can give us the other half of that retainer fee. And make sure that it's paid before we submit that application with you and do the full review. So that's usually how it works.
And I apologize for having a little morning snack here while we're doing our live stream, but my blood sugar is shot. I had about 2 hours and 45 minutes of sleep last night, and so I needed something to pick me up and keep me going here.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mark, just going back to Isabella's question, she's asking, would you recommend start subscribing after I get an ITA or before?
No, the reality is there's content in there that will help you even in your preparations. You know, suggestions on improving things. We even have a particular lesson focused on French language with Jean P. No, what is his? What, I can't remember.
Emily P.
What is it?
Emily P.
No.
Jean.
Jean. Our French language. Yeah. So we have a lesson that was prepared specifically by a French language tutor, and then links back to really good courses for people who are trying to level up their French. And so, and there's just a lot of instruction on the front end to help guide you and prepare, let alone after you get an ITA and all the resources and the documents and the templates and the checklists and all of those things. But because it's access for life, like at whatever stage you need it, if you subscribe now just to get familiar with how express entry works, so you can start preparing, and you don't even intend to submit a profile for 2 years down the road, well, by then the course may adjust and upgrade a little bit more if immigration makes changes. Well, you have access to all those upgrades too. So there's really no reason not to subscribe. And we talk a little bit about here in the live stream, but we really don't do a lot to promote it globally. We're working on that. But I think it's the best little resource out there for people who are just looking to kind of DIY it themselves. And then we find that a lot of people, if they do run into issues that are challenging, they're just not sure how to deal with it. And the course isn't designed to answer specific questions other than the masterclass. But people then often retain us to just assist with their applications if they're in a position where they just need extra help. And sometimes people just want the peace of mind of just knowing that there's someone in there, who's got their back, who's helping them and putting their applications together so that they can sleep well at night. And so we have a lot of people that retain our firm for that reason. They just, they've known us for a long time. They think we're okay people. We appear to know what we're talking about, and they trust us that we're going to help them. So,
and maybe the best feedback about the course is up on the screen from Joe.
Oh, Joe.
Yeah, it's one of the best courses you could get. Weekly Q&A, structured instructions, and how to do stuff, insane value. So thank you so much, Joe.
And that means a lot too, Joe, because the course itself is around $430, $440 Canadian. So it's not like it's just this cheap. Like, people are used to getting courses for $15, $20 or whatever from what is that course offering? I can't remember. Anyways, like for really, really cheap. And it's not that way, but largely it's because of everything that comes with it. Not only is the course itself just completely self-sustaining and its content is constantly fresh, but you have the access to the masterclass and then all the templates. And we even have some custom GPTs that we've created to help people when they're trying to sort out their knock codes and, build sample reference letters for their employers to review, things like that. And so all of that is where, the value. So thanks, Joe. That's great.
Yeah, perfect. We're coming close to the scheduled end of our live Q&A, but we still have many, many questions to go through. So I will be pulling up those fairly quickly so that we try to answer as many as possible.
Speed it up. Okay, I got my game face on. I've had my little bit of yogurt here. I'm good to go now.
The Blitz, the new format for the live Q&A. Okay, so Laura is asking, I was in China from 2019 to 2024. From what period of time to what period of time does my police certificate have to be issued?
I'm not aware in China if they do it that way. Maybe they do, Alicia. But as far as I could tell, the police clearance certificates that we see that come back, I don't believe they are restricted by, like, in any temporal nature. Maybe I'm off with this, Alicia. It's been a while and my clients just seem to get them, and I don't pay a lot of attention to if there's any temporal limitations, like sometimes we have in, say, Pakistan or other countries like that. But
yeah, I don't remember ever seeing a police certificate that would be limited in time.
Maybe click on if you're not a citizen of China and if you live outside China. I think that might be the case.
I'm just going to pull up this, Mark. So this is an example of
from the course
of the Chinese police certificate. And so you can see, let's see, so this is
I don't see any temporal durations.
During his period of residence.
Oh, yes, it is. Right. Yes, it is. Good. Okay. There we go. So if you were from that time period, you're going to get everything. Now, if some of the time period was before you were 18 years of age, then theoretically you don't need that. But they say go back 10 years in time. So that's really the window that they're looking at. But I personally, if you're 18, out of an abundance of caution, and they say, well, what time period? Well, obviously it's going to be for the duration of time that you've lived there, but you would need to go back earlier than the 18 years of age.
Wonderful question. I'm glad that we pulled this up.
Yeah, 10 years, whatever. I don't know how long I've been doing this. I started with my EE Live Q&As. That was the first thing that I did when I was on Facebook. And I've never had that question. That's the first time I've had someone ask. Well, like, that exists in Pakistan with residents and things like that. But I've never even clued in on that.
I also noticed, I was looking on the listserv too, I think some other immigration officers are noticing that the Chinese police certificates, they used to be 3 pages and now they're coming back as 5 pages sometimes. And so it might be that different provinces are also changing the way that they're issuing the police certificates. So there might be some changes afoot with the way China's doing police certificates.
Yeah, with some countries, it's just a like ultimate pain trying to get a police certificate,
Yeah.
like from Montenegro, from Israel until recently, and perhaps even now, and from China especially. So
Yeah, and you know, some of the Middle East, like Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, those are tricky. Yeah.
yeah, and so probably here we can share a pro tip. When you think about immigrating to Canada through Express Entry, you want to request a police certificate ASAP, because sometimes it may take half a year for you
Yeah.
to wait until you get the police certificate, and you only have 60 days to submit your EAPR. And so some people are asking, like, do I need to wait for an ITA and then request police certificates? No. If circumstances permit, request those ahead
Yeah,
of time.
in advance.
Okay. Tulipa is asking, at what point will a person get their acknowledgement of receipt? Is it before or after their bio and
Biometrics.
biometrics? Yeah. So it's before.
Before.
Yeah. Because they have
I'm
to
assuming we're
assign the
talking about
application.
Express Entry.
Mm-hmm.
It might be different, Talipa, if you're talking about a different type of application. So if you're not talking about Express Entry, then sometimes there's a big delay on getting an acknowledgement of receipt if you're doing like a PR portal application, for example.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Next question is from Cynthia, and she actually had her question broken down in 2 questions. I'm an early childhood educator. I have French CLB7 in all 4 categories, which is awesome. And I equally have French with 7, 8, 9, and 5, okay, in all categories. I'm not sure if that's CELPIP or IELTS, but whatever, in all categories. And I'm currently on a 1-year postgrad with
It sounds like
US.
a bell. Ding, ding.
Yeah.
It's
So
this specific
please, what's
one.
my best option? Your best option is to reach out for a consultation. And that's going to
Absolutely.
be your best option and your very first step
Yeah.
before we can tell you what to pursue.
But notwithstanding that, as you guys have learned over the however many years we've been doing this, notwithstanding that, if you flip back, Igor, just to the previous original comment, we always like to provide something. So we're not here to just say, oh, if it's a tricky question, we're not going to even address anything related to it. Just book a consult, pay us money. No, that's not how we're wired. So generally speaking, anyone you've got a skilled position, you're above a tier 3 with your education. French is what you need to meet the category-based draws through Express Entry. You've got English to maximize your language scores to really capitalize on the additional points that are awarded, another 50 points there. And and you're currently on your 1-year postgrad, which just started. If you have 1 year of foreign work experience, for instance, you can still get into the pool with that if you have it. If you've not yet accumulated a full year of work experience, either foreign or Canadian, then you won't be eligible to start Express Entry. But if you do have it, by all means, you would want to start submitting a profile if you had a year before you came to Canada to study, as long as it's at a tier 3 or higher. And it doesn't need to be related to your ECE. It can be any foreign work experience. And then ultimately, the category-based draw is based on French, which if you have 4 in all 4 categories, that's phenomenal. So, and
But
you
then
really are well set up. Yeah, go ahead, Igor.
another qualifier is that you can create a profile if you meet the eligibility requirements for
Yeah,
FSW. So
yeah,
if you score 67 points, and
yeah.
that really depends on your level of education first, that really depends on your age, on your years of foreign work experience. And sometimes you need to have more than 1 year. Sometimes you need to claim up to 5 years of work experience to get up to 67 points. And we just have so many questions that must be answered before we can actually give you
Yeah,
a
for
definite
sure.
strategy.
Yeah,
And Cynthia, we really recommend you reach out and book a consult now rather than later. And the reason is you're GWP. Like the clock is ticking and you do not have a lot of time. And I can tell you the most heartbreaking thing is when I have consults with people who've waited till the last second and
yeah,
really I would have told them I would have loved to have told them something a year before that would have and allowed them to set themselves up so that they could at least get their foot in the door and maximize their points and have an option to try to find some way for getting that express entry application in the future. So please book a consult, but you only have a year. And so the clock is ticking. If you can do whatever you can do to try to maximize getting a job as soon as possible so that you can get your full 52 weeks of Canadian high skilled work experience, that's so important. And we can talk to you about when you can start claiming that, how you need to structure, what kind of occupation you should be looking for, what's going on with your family situation. We've got lots of questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there are many other options that we can also discuss, including the Francophone Mobility Work Permit, which is available to you, and perhaps you're not limited to 1 year only with your postgrad, and there are some pathways for you. But again, all of this is...
And that requires an employer who's supporting you, and yeah.
Okay, so we'll jump on to the next one from Alvin. My previous employer doesn't want to provide me with a reference letter, only certificate of employment. What supporting document should I add up? And I have exact same situation right now with my Ukrainian client who used to work in Poland for a big employer, like a big multinational company. And it was a mess, like the whole work arrangement. And they essentially retained me to write a letter to their employer. And the employer just sent me a message saying, the only document we give is when the employee ceases work for our company, and that document was given 5 years ago, so get lost.
Yeah, and that's an example of a company that sucks. And I'd love to post them everywhere saying, don't work for these losers.
Yeah, our world would be a lot different if not for this company, I'll tell you this. So this company is a huge player in the world of digital services.
Who is it? Let's tell them. Like, it's nothing like good public shaming for a company who treats their workers like just chattels. And that's really what it is. When you're not even doing that after they've worked for you, provided good service, helped you to get to where you are, I just have no patience for that. You know, there's no, I don't care what the employment laws or otherwise are. There's no justification in my mind for not explaining and providing a letter, a simple reference letter to confirm what the person actually did for you. We're not asking for you to say anything that's not true. And I know there's employment, like I did practice employment law at the beginning of my practice, you know, corporate, the employer side, institutional clients. And yeah, at the end of the day, there's no liability sharing exactly what you're doing unless you're somehow using that an employee in a different way than you're actually divulging or disclosing to the revenue agency in your country, which is a real factor I've seen. But then once again, not great. So
yeah. And so, Alvin, to circle back to your question, this is something we talk about extensively in the course. So it's in the Express Entry course. But generally, you're going to do whatever you can to try to get alternate evidence. You're going to go back and try to find a contract, right? Did you actually sign an employment contract? What did it say? Was there a job description when you applied for that job? Was there a posting, a public posting? Do you have letters from coworkers? Can you cobble together other evidence to show what projects you were working on? Was there something publicly on their website showing that you were an employee working on this kind of project, right? There's a whole bunch of other stuff that you can try to cobble together as well as pay stubs and tax documentation to try to prove what you were doing. But you have the onus to try to make sure that you prove to the immigration officer, this was the knock that I was doing. These were the hours, this was my rate of pay, and this is checking out entirely on what I've claimed.
Yeah.
Here's a little glimpse into the document that we provide with the course. It says here's the list. The list is hidden.
See, there's the bait. There's the bait. See, he's dangling the bait here for you to subscribe to the course so you get access to this. And basically we've got a big long list of additional things. And this is why we love Alicia. See, Mark is a very passionate soul. And I have very low patience for employers or anyone who doesn't treat our clients and our friends like they should be treated. And just, you know, I have very little patience for them. And yeah, I'm a Robin Hood for the Robin from the rich and given to the poor kind of guy. So I don't mind robbing if I have to at times. So figuratively.
All right. The next question is
if I'm robbing their public goodwill, and exposing that they're kind of lousy in this one regard, I have no problems with it, but
Like,
I won't.
I could share the name. I could share the name of the company. First, I have to
Okay.
get an authorization from the client,
From the client.
right? And I don't have
Yeah.
that. But what I
No.
can tell is that I don't need to share the name, because essentially the problem is that whatever huge company that you're working for,
All the same. Yeah.
they are all the same.
Yeah.
Banks,
Yeah.
big like IT giants,
Yeah.
especially IT companies in developing countries where they hire you as a contractor part
Yeah.
time and then hire you as an employee part time, and they can only prove your part time employee work experience, and they have
Mhm.
nothing to do with your contractor part of the work. Like, it happens across the board. And
Yeah. And in fairness, I'll just qualify. In fairness, the banks in Canada have been not bad about providing reference letters, but they'll just never do anything more than that in
mhm,
terms of actually supporting someone unless you're senior executive,
mhm,
with the headquarters. So it's always dangerous for foreign workers to choose to work in some of the institutional clients unless you've asked the question in advance. Do
mhm,
you have a policy of not supporting permanent residence of your workers? And if they say, yeah, we have a policy, we don't do that, we'll provide a reference letter. Okay, well, that's fine. But understand, when you need them, when push comes to shove, they're going to be just happy to see you go and replace you with someone else as to try to support you and to really go to bat for you. So
yeah.
every employer is different. Yeah.
And speaking of Canadian employers, this issue became particularly painful when AIP rolled out their changes, asking
Yeah.
that employers provide an employer authorization letter, and
Authorization.
there the rubber hit the road, and then we see like people abandoning their hopes for immigrating to Canada just because their employer is not willing to support them and they don't qualify for federal economic immigration programs.
Yeah. Yeah, we could create a separate video on our pet peeves
Mhm.
with employers who don't support their workers. But at this stage, know that we're here to help and to do everything we can. As Alicia so professionally pointed out, we've got tools and resources in the course to help you to deal with the situation you're dealt with, because you can't change the situation you're in. It is what it is. And so all you can do is try to find alternative means to provide that same level of evidence, at a level where an officer would deem it credible. So and
Yeah.
and useful.
Okay. So this question from Anuj, we'll answer it pretty quickly. It's a week, draw week. I don't know what what he means by draw week. We don't know when the draw is going to happen. Nobody
Yeah.
knows.
Historically, you look back and you say, okay, well, what has happened in the past? Sometimes that's a predictor of the future, but not always.
Mhm.
And so why not, Anush? Yeah, it's a draw week. Let's celebrate draw week and see if it actually comes to fruition. I would rub the crystal ball here, but that's on a different platform, our crystal ball. It's on my computer. And when Igor's hosting, I don't think he has the crystal ball. But
Yet.
why not? Sure, Anush. Yeah. I'm gonna say there's gonna be a PNP this week. That's what I'm gonna say. But it's
I
interesting, you guys, the PNPs have also, there's not as big of a priority these days because there's so few issued for express entry. I still think of Prem and his dear wife, how Prem's our intake specialist. So if any of you have booked consult with us, you've worked through Prem. And I think of just how fortunate he was, him and his wife, to get a nomination from the province. Prem's spouse is a nurse, and so that's definitely a priority for Alberta. But boy, it sure is rare. And then they're not going through express entry either, so they're going through the regular PR portal route. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. All right. This one from Alphonse. He's asking, what are the factors to consider when applying for a TRP from inside Canada? That is the shortest question, but with the longest answer possible.
Yeah.
The main fact you need to consider, and then I'll turn it over to Alicia, is just hiring us to assist you, or at least booking a consult so we can talk about the process, because it is so different for everyone. It
Mhm.
truly is. Okay, Alicia, over to you.
And I just had somebody reach out and book a consult, and it was all about how do I apply for a TRP? And the first thing that I asked is, why do you want to apply for a TRP? Because a TRP is your absolute last option. So keep in mind that this is not a TRV, right? It's not a temporary resident visa. It's a TRP, a temporary resident permit. These used to be called minister's permits way back when, and there are
Now you're
very
dating.
few of them. Yeah, they're very discretionary. They are given at the discretion, usually of a senior officer. It is to overcome some sort of inadmissibility or inability to meet a category under the Act. And generally, it is the last thing you want to do. It is only as a last resort if you have exhausted all your other possibilities. You'd be looking at Section 24 of the Act in terms of what are the factors they look at for a temporary residence permit. There is a lot of case law on it. It is very individual. It really depends on exactly what's happened with your situation. So please book a consult because this is something that's so individualized. We just need to know more about what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll have 4 more questions before we wrap this up. So Ashanti's asking.
This is really overtime, man. You guys are getting a good fill here of responses. This is awesome.
So Ashanti says, I use NOC 72300 as a solar panel installer in my
Cool.
profile, but my duties better match with coordinator role. If I change the NOC before an ITA, will there be any issues?
Well,
Maybe.
maybe, obviously if you've submitted a profile and it's an active profile, that's a part of your history. And officers can see the legacy changes that have happened if you're making modifications to your profile. And if you're flipping around from not code to not code, sometimes an officer, if they look back, would wonder, okay, well, what is it? Is there a reason why you had it as an installer in one situation and now a coordinator? So as always, like we teach in the course and like we do with our clients, letters of explanation are kind of like the secret sauce. And so anytime you make a change where you think, well, I wonder if an officer will understand why I'm doing that. Ding, a letter of explanation. And so,
and we have another secret tool.
Yeah, and not only that too, though, Ashanti, because sometimes, so when somebody books a consult, often they ask a question and the problem is in things that they don't even realize and they haven't even asked. And so this is where I start digging, right? I start digging and I start asking, well, what kind of work permit did you have? Because in some circumstances, if you had a closed employer-specific work permit and your employer had put in an employer portal offer that's LMIA exempt, or that had submitted an LMIA and they asked for a certain NOC and you now say you're doing a different NOC, you've got a giant problem because either you worked without authorization or you're lying on your express entry, or both, or one of them. So, I mean, it really depends what kind of work permit, when did you start working? What is your employer going to say? Reach out and talk to your employer, because if they're not going to get a letter that accords with what you think it's going to say, then you've got a problem as well. So there's a bunch of moving factors and you just want to make sure that everybody's on the same page and that there's no inadmissibility or misrep or potential work without authorization in your history.
And the secret tool that we use with our clients is NOC selection tool.
Oh, yeah.
This is something that you would want to use, perhaps, to explain the officer why you have chosen this NOC code and not the other one. And I'm not going to spoiler alert how does it work, but it's accessible in our expert-centric course.
Yeah.
So absolutely consider subscribing there. Okay. Laura is asking, IRCC asked me to provide documents for work Will IRCC ask me to provide documents for the work experience stated in the personal history section during an expert entry application?
If the work experience wasn't listed in your work history section and it's only in your personal history, then no.
Okay, straight and simple. Okay, Ali's asking, can postgrad work permit holders apply for Alberta Tourism and Hospitality Stream? A quick answer, Alicia?
I don't know. Alicia, have you?
I would have to go double check.
I'd have to look at that one. I don't file a lot through that stream. I'd need to take a look, but I can guarantee the eligibility criteria will state it. Yeah. And the reason this is an issue, Ali, and for those who are wondering, well, what's the big deal? Why would postgrad work permit holders not be able to apply? Well, there are some restrictions. I would assume, Ali, that that there isn't a restriction for postgrad work permit holders, but if there is, it would be similar to the Alberta Opportunity Stream, where an individual needs to be working, or the job offer needs to be in a field related to the field of study. So the occupation needs to be related to that field of study. Were you able to find it, Igor?
Yeah, the short answer is no. So you must
Okay.
have an employer-specific LMA work-based work permit, or issued
Special measures like the
measures.
COET work permit.
No, no,
Oh,
no.
that's
So
wildfires. Oh, okay. Okay.
everything else, no. It has to be an employer-specific work permit.
Oh, so So the answer is, are postgrad work permit holders eligible? No, they're not.
Okay.
Yeah, because you need, yeah. Does it allow for international mobility program, Igor, or is it just LMIA?
It's LMA-based work permit.
So not even francophone mobilité, like the,
Nope.
interesting. Even if it's other employer under IMP. Okay, yep.
And
There we go. That's how we do this. Yeah.
yeah, and so the last question would be from Collins. So my common law partner got the refusal of the visitor visa today after waiting for 10 months. I am a student doing an MBA in a private university in BC. I don't know what to do now.
You book a consult. Simple as that. Yeah, that's a nasty situation. I just have a pro bono client that I've been assisting on a pro bono basis, who I'm helping with an H&C, and they said, okay, I need to go back to Africa, and so I'm going to apply for my temporary resident visa. And I get this panicked phone call as I'm moving from my son's wedding ceremony to our family dinner, and this panic call from him sharing his visitor record extension, which was actually only extended till the third week here in August, because like this individual, it took 10 months to process, or however long. But in his case, he wanted a TRV, not a visitor extension. He did the wrong process. And now he has a family member that's very ill in Africa. He's here caring for a son who's experiencing severe mental illness. Like, he's been hospitalized, and his dad's here with him trying to care for him. So now he has to go back, and it's a mess. And yeah, and so yeah, consult, that's the way to go.
And okay, Emily P is just following on her previous questions. For Express Entry, do you guys represent clients in Ontario?
Yeah, I'd say of all the provinces that I actually work for, I think I have more clients in Ontario than I do Alberta right now. We have a good contingent from British Columbia as well, but those are definitely the three main hubs for us: is Ontario, British Columbia, and Alberta. But
everywhere other than Quebec, we can
yeah.
do anything other than the province of Quebec.
Yeah,
like
and
even Antarctica, like we can do Africa, Australia.
That's
Like
the spirit, Igor. Iceland. I specialize in Iceland.
Yes, Greenland.
Not specialized. No, I love working with people from Iceland. I'm gonna have to go visit them and do it in person, though. I've
Okay,
been meaning
with
to.
Quebec, Mark, we can represent people in Quebec as long as they want to move out of Quebec. So
Yeah, there you go. That's a spirit.
That's
a spirit.
correct.
Not based on any Quebec immigration policy or otherwise.
Yeah. And we will wrap this up with a comment from Pankaj, who says, "I love Canada.
Nice.
We love Canada as well."
Not a lot of love. Not a lot of love going around there for Canada these days, and rightly or wrongly. But I can tell you, I was having a discussion with someone who is coming from Australia, and their spouse is in Canada, and they're just trying to work out kind of the logistics of it. And Canada's still pretty awesome, even though things are not as good as they used to be. When you compare the situation in the United States, whether it's Australia, New Zealand, the UK, Canada's still pretty darn good place. So grateful to be Canadian.
Yeah, perfect. So for everyone who was watching this live Q&A, we wanted to say thank you. Ali says thanks. Thank you, Ali. Thank you to everyone for your wonderful questions. We will see you next week. Again, we hope that we will have a special guest who will share her experience
cool.
navigating the immigration process for her sister. A little spoiler alert. And again, Wednesdays, 10 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. In the meantime, if you need any personalized assistance or help, or you just want to have a little like a second opinion about your
Yeah.
immigration situation, or some sort of immigration help,
Yeah.
please reach out
Strategic
to us.
planning, trying to map out what your future holds, what
Mm-hmm.
your options are. One thing I can promise to everyone is kind of a sign off is that when you book a consult with us, we're going to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to give you advice and direction that sometimes it may not be what you were hoping to hear, but it will be what you need to hear. And what you need to hear is the truth. You need to have all of the facts, and our legal opinions that we provide to you in those consultations are based on that. It's based on an opinion of what we think the future may look like for you. And that comes from Alicia and I over 20 years. Igor's closing in on us pretty fast too for how long you've been working with the firm. But you can trust that we'll be honest. And I saw there was someone who left a pretty kind Google review the other day, and it was kind of along those lines about just feeling like they could trust the answer. And there's people on those Google reviews that I've had to say, look, you probably have to go home, that were just so appreciative that someone told them that. So yeah, on our website it kind of takes us there. But
And I do
yeah.
want to jump in just because I had a consult yesterday with somebody,
Mm.
and at the end she said, "Well, I just had a consultation with you. I asked you questions like, do I need a use of rep? I'm seeing all sorts of stuff on like Facebook and the internet about I have to get like, if I had a lawyer help me or anybody help me, I have to have a use of representative." And no, like we are lawyers, we are subject to solicitor client privilege. So we cannot tell anybody what has happened in that consultation with you. It is actually legally protected. The courts can't compel us to do it. Immigration can't compel us to do it. Whatever you tell us is private, and we only are giving you advice. And if we are only giving you advice and we're not reviewing your application, you don't need a use of representative. We are not taking over as representatives. And in fact, the way that we work as a firm is that we don't take your password, we don't take access to your file. We are only there to give you advice, and we are authorized 100% under Section 91. We're immigration lawyers. We are all practicing members of the Law Society of Alberta, and therefore we're authorized to give you advice, but we're not taking over on your file. So we'll give you a letter saying, yep, you paid us. Yep, we're lawyers. You can check out all of our information here, but we're not taking over. You maintain control of your file, and you have the ability to understand what's going on directly with immigration. So if you're worried about booking a consult because you've talked to a lawyer and you think you have to do a use of rep, please put your mind at ease. That's not how it works.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's kind of funny, spacebound. Do you guys also provide therapy sessions? Well, we are not licensed therapists. We are immigration lawyers. But what we can provide is an understanding ear, compassion, and advice that hopefully will give you the tools to then make good decisions going forward for yourself. And, at the end of the day, one of the things I say repeatedly is that no one out there cares as much about your application as we do, except yourself. There may be other wonderful lawyers out there, consultants that care as much as we do, but no one cares more.
Yeah.
So
And
that's
in some sort, we do provide therapy sessions, especially when we connect with people who don't have any options, and
yeah,
some
yeah.
people who are struggling and they have nothing else to do but submit an
Mm,
HNC application or a TRP application. I
yeah.
just recently had someone who paid $5,000 to an immigration consultant who submitted an HNC application that consisted of 5 pages of text in the submission, and it was like double spaced and barely like even talking about the factors. Like absolutely
Little
useless
substance. Yeah.
application. There's not a single chance that it can get approved. And I could see those people crying. I could see those people begging for help,
Yeah.
and it felt like a therapy session. And
Yeah.
we're there to help.
Yeah. I was thinking too, I know we keep going on and on about this, and yeah, never before in my practice have there been more tears shed in my consultations. And then I was looking back, probably most of those were mine and not even the clients. And yeah, it's been a very, very emotional kind of time because for years, I don't know, at least if you feel the same way, for years, I had all the answers. I knew exactly what someone needed to do. And there were very, very few situations where I couldn't fix something. But now it's really difficult. Everything is, we still know the avenues, we still direct people, but the government has done a pretty good job at closing off a lot of options that we may have otherwise had to help people. And that's, I guess, what's frustrating. So
Yeah.
there we go.
So don't get despaired. We'll see you next week. And hopefully we will help you as well. And for some people, maybe this live Q&A is some sort of a therapy session where
Yeah.
they can
Hey,
leave their
be
comments,
bad.
speak it
Yes.
out, say it out loud, I'm struggling, I need help,
Yeah.
here's my little question, and we'll try to answer that.
Yeah. Yeah. And you'll see that, like, as I scroll through the comments, we have a lot of comments, and they don't always get pulled up onto our live stream here, but know that we read them. We hear you, and the community that's a part of this reads them as well. And sometimes we don't agree with the comments you post. Sometimes we do agree. But at the end of the day, we are just really grateful to have this platform to share what we know and give you guys a place for a little bit of an outlet. All right.
Perfect. So on this note, let's say goodbye to everyone, and until next